Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Mika Riley. Welcome to our ACL Community. This platform was created by the Movement, Rehab, and Performance team to educate, empower, and help improve the outcomes of all of you ACLers out there. So I'm really excited because today we have Emily Barnhart, a registered dietitian and sports nutritionist. She's worked in collegiate and professional athletics and has a lot to say about how to fuel your body. And we're so stoked about this, especially for all of you ACL rehabbers out there. So we're going to talk about a lot of things nutrition based and how to navigate the ACL rehab process, but also think about your nutrition at the same time to help fuel those gains, specifically the quad. So without further ado, hi, Emily.
Hi, Micah. Thanks so much. Yes, a lot to say makes this sound intimidating, but it's like, easy snippets that you can take into this overwhelming process to make it work for you, right? Nutrition is like a supporting piece of this. It shouldn't be the overwhelming piece of this.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I think, can you, just to kind of get us started, just to help us understand a little bit of your background, can you first start out with how'd you get into this? What's your education? What's all of your credentials behind this?
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot of random letters and people are like, okay, whatever. Can you help me? Right. So yes, to become a registered dietitian, first and foremost, you have to have a bachelor's degree in science. So a lot of those undergrad classes that stress us all out, like, anatomy and biochem and all that stuff, did that. And then I went to grad school for exercise physiology. So I worked in a research lab and kind of did some more nutrition courses there. And then to become a dietitian, you have to do a year-long like residency almost in a hospital and then take a national board exam. So that's kind of the main difference between a dietitian and a nutritionist is one, we spend way too long in school, and the other, it's kind of up in the air. So that's the big difference. And then to get into sports, I myself was an athlete. I've always worked in athletics, did a lot of like strength coaching and that kind of stuff in undergrad. And then when I started to pivot into nutrition, I worked at University of Virginia. I worked in professional baseball for a little bit. Now I'm currently working with our Team USA athletes, our men and women's court volleyball athletes, and doing this stuff as well. And it's really fun. It's been like a roundabout journey to get here. But I love ACL athletes because there's just a lot going on with you guys. Like it's kind of a complicated picture, and so many ACL athletes, because it is such a long rehab process. And to be clear, I also mean anybody with an ACL injury that has an athletic goal to return to. I don't mean you have to be an Olympian for me to consider you an athlete. But so many of you are worried about gaining weight and how you're going to handle this stress when, normally your stress is going for a run and you relieve it that way. And now all you want to do is eat and you feel like there's no control around that. And also there's some really cool science-y type stuff of how nutrition helps in this. So for me, this is I don't want to call it a cool puzzle because it's not fun for you guys. But there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle that make everybody unique and everybody kind of interesting to work with.
Yeah, that's awesome. You have a lot of experience. I guess the next question I have is how did you get involved in the ACL rehab world? Clearly you probably have come across quite a lot of ACLers, but how did you dive deeper into that?
Yeah, when I worked in professional baseball, I worked pretty closely with our rehab group. And there were a lot of Tommy John guys in there, which is kind of like the ACL of your elbow. Mm-hmm. And when I was in that world, they had an amazing rehab setup where it was a specific separate entity, and they had a dietitian, they had a specific strength coach, they had their own PT, their own athletic trainer, their own mental health access, their own rehab coaches. And just being around those people, not just the athletes themselves, but the, all of the like fence posts surrounding them, helped me understand all of the different aspects to this rehab puzzle and all of the conversations that maybe should be happening around nutrition that I don't think is happening for a lot of people. So when I left that job in baseball, I was like, I want to work with more injured athletes because that's where I saw the gap was
Right.
of, you know, either providing direct resources and help to athletes or anyone with an injury, or by like connecting with people like you and helping the boots on the ground is what I like to call you guys that are
Yeah.
getting that hands-on access to people. Like, how can I help you navigate those conversations so that more people are feeling more comfortable with the nutrition piece of this puzzle? So yeah, started kind of in the Tommy John world
Yeah.
and then opened it up to all rehab. And ACL online communities are incredible. And they just kind of like pounced and they were like, we want this and we want more of this. And they were super chatty and like told me all of their stories, which was so fun and inspiring and heartbreaking sometimes. And yeah, over the last year and a half, I've really seen a lot of ACL athletes, and I don't want to call myself an expert in ACL, but yeah, I've seen a lot of you guys.
Yeah, you've got quite a bit of experience. That's what I tell people. You got quite a bit of experience. I think I'm on the same page with you. I think there are a lot of components in ACL rehab that are missing. And one of the biggest things in order for us to do our job well on the boots on the ground per se, is all about how they're feeling their body. And if that's not happening, then we're losing out on some gains. And so definitely much needed conversations regarding nutrition. Well, let's get into it, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it.
So, I took a poll of questions just to see what people are looking for. I think it's really important. Just, there's not a whole lot of understanding of like, what is nutrition or where does it even start? I mean, there's a lot of science stuff behind it. We won't get into that today, but I think the biggest thing that from a clinician perspective, what I educate quite a bit on is just macros, hitting those things. Could you speak to us about those and all the breakdowns of that?
Sure. This is where it's like everybody is different, right? But for the most part, for most people, if you take your body weight and multiply it by 30 to 35, that's where your macros should fall. And I don't always like to share numbers, but I feel pretty comfortable sharing that one because that ends up higher than most people think it is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of an eye opener of like, oh yeah, even though I'm not running right now, or I'm not playing soccer right now, or lifting or whatever you might be used to doing physically, your body is still doing a lot underneath the surface, right? You're like a little duck where you're calm and you feel like you're just laying on the couch watching Netflix all day. But underneath, those pedals are turning and you're keeping your immune system going. You're healing that big lump on your knee that's, kind of distracting right now. That takes a lot of energy. Obviously your brain is thinking, your heart's got to beat all the time. There's a lot going on that I think we forget about. So the calorie piece in general, I think, is a fun number to share sometimes because it's higher than people expect it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the biggest part is like, it depends because everybody's situation is so different. Everyone's body weight is so different. It just really has to be individualized to that person. In terms of, talking about fueling our bodies, can you define that a little bit and how maybe it helps from the perspective of trying to muscle gain and things that are really important during the ACL rehab process?
Yeah. So especially in the beginning, right after surgery, if you elect to have surgery or need to have surgery, those first 2 weeks are where, and this, you've seen it, you've experienced it, where up to like 60% of your muscle atrophy or muscle loss can happen. And when you think about muscle, it's either breaking down or it's building up. Like it's never stagnant. And those signals that we can give it to build up include exercise, which you're not doing right now, and eating, which usually people are not doing, right? Because there's constipation, there's all these things after surgery that get in the way of eating. Okay. But what eating can do, especially in those first 2 weeks, not only is it making sure we have everything we need to repair that knee and that ACL and everything that went in there, but it's also sending that signal, hey, wait, I know we're not using you right now, muscle, but I want you in the future. So we're going to keep you. It's
Yep.
kind of like the best chance we got for the beginning. And it's strongest in those 2 weeks. And then obviously, as you move on to different stages of rehab, there's a few other little things that come in place. But when we think about nutrition for ACLs, are we providing everything that your tendon or your ligament needs to become strong? And are we maintaining our muscle and rebuilding our muscle?
Yeah, absolutely. Like a lot of stuff happens. I mean, from the external perspective, you see like this thigh go from being massive to all of a sudden you can put your whole hands around it. And it is saddening, honestly. Me going through it right now, it's just like, oh my gosh. But I think you're onto something when it comes to, having just recently experienced it myself. You sometimes aren't hungry. When you're taking meds, you're not hungry, or, you're depressed, you're hungry sometimes, and you might not grab the most highest nutrition valued food, because we all have our comfort food, let's be real. But, there's just a lot going on. And I feel like sometimes most of my clients in particular, there's more breakdown than there is really build up sometimes. And then we kind of we're basically in the middle of a lake, just trying to doggy paddle our way somewhere, and we're not getting anywhere. So that was very helpful. So when it comes to, back on the subject of macros and trying to fuel our body well, like, we talked about it's very individual based, but what would you say is like the most bang for our buck macro that we really need during this time?
Trick question. I'm going to give you a trick answer because you need all three.
I know, right?
I'll break them down for you. We'll talk about that macro circle and what it kind of look like. So obviously we all know protein. Protein is what's sending the signal to the muscle. Protein is the bricks to build our house. We need to get enough protein. I think sometimes it can be overemphasized.
Mm-hmm.
So we should be aiming for our body weight in protein. Mm-hmm. And that should take, I want to say max 30% of your total calories.
Mm-hmm.
If you're getting higher than that, and even sometimes at 30%, we're going to be having some stomach problems. We might be exacerbating the constipation issue. Like there's just other things that are going to be happening. And protein is really like bad energy. It's hard, not getting too sciencey, but it's like trying to untie too many knots to make it become energy. So it's like we're putting a ton of bricks at this construction site, but we're not bringing any workers to actually build them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's the protein piece. It's the bricks. People want to cut out carbs.
Mm-hmm.
Carbs are the workers that we're bringing onto our construction site. I also kind of think carbs are, like you were just saying, that like comfort food and enjoyment piece. And you're already going through a lot. So why are we going to take that away?
Yeah.
Right. So carbs for most people are kind of 40 to 50%. Mm-hmm. And carbs, like I said, are the energy. There's also some specific nutrients that we can find in carbs that are really helpful for healing. So we don't want to cut those out. Okay. And then fats make things taste good. That's one thing.
That's right.
And fats are helpful for our hormones. So that's why we need fats in our diet. And especially if we're focusing on like healthy fats, like coming from salmon and tuna and olive oil and walnuts and all of that kind of stuff. I like to, if we're going to use this construction site analogy, I like to think of them as like the garbage men and women. So we have protein, which is the bricks to build our new house. We have carbs, which are like the workers to come actually put it together. And then we have our kind of antioxidants and anti-inflammatory fats, which come kind of clean out the gunk. And we need some of that too.
Yeah, you just need a whole source of everything. I know, I think that is a trick question, right? Because it's all dependent on what people are not consuming. And it's our favorite word. It depends at the end of the day, which is as much as it sucks to say sometimes, it just really does. I think the biggest thing is thinking about, when it comes to, I think the biggest thing I get about a lot of people come in and say, I heard protein, if consumed in excess, is really bad. Protein gets a lot of either the focus, really like slam dunk, hit it, and then we forget about everything else. But then sometimes it also we get really concerned sometimes. And, out there, they're like protein consumed in excess is bad. What's your take on that?
Yes, I'm so happy you brought this up. If you have a kidney problem, then yes, we have a limit on how much protein. But if you have functional kidneys, then I can pull up research papers that debunk this. And too much protein is not going to be physically harmful for you. But like I said, we kind of want to keep it below that 30% of total intake so that just digestively, it's not causing some discomfort. Like, not to get too graphic here, but I think maybe we've all heard of like the protein farts.
Oh yeah,
smelled people that have the protein farts. That's when that balance of protein to carbs to fats gets a little off. And you know, if you are laying in bed all day, like, you don't want to be stinking up your sheets and like making yourself.
You want to smell the roses, not protein farts, right?
Yeah, exactly. So like, it's not, you know, too much protein is not going to send you to the hospital. Like I think some people are worried about it's going to cause kidney damage. I've never seen any research that links that together. It's when you already have kidney problems that it can become an issue.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that doesn't mean we want to eat 100% protein all the time.
Yeah, right. I think you were talking about constipation a little bit too, and I think that ties well into protein consumption.
Yeah.
What it can do, you know, clearly if you're on these narcotics and all these concoctions, sometimes you're constipated, and sometimes for many days at a time, hopefully not longer than like 4 days. But that's a thing. And so I think you hit the nail on the head with that, of like, you don't want 100% of it, but you also don't want to be too much into it where it's also creating a problem where you're like, you just need to have your natural body processes happen. So it's a nice fine balance. So, you know, just thinking back about my own experience, about probably many other people out there, their experience as well. Early recovery sucks just in general. And, you know, there's just a lot, even beyond early recovery, how to like navigate life and trying to navigate your rehab and like fit all your exercises in and like try to go socialize and do all this stuff. So when it comes to feeling our body, you know, it's hard to kind of do that sometimes. Is there like a recommendation on how people can do this and integrate it into their daily life?
Yeah, I think in a perfect world, we can plan before surgery happens. So on those lucky scenarios when I can talk to someone prior to surgery, we can make sure we have a plan in place, whether that's like their plan for Instacart, or whether that's like we're making some meals and freezing them ahead of time, or we're figuring out which family member is going to help us out. But we don't live in a perfect world. So if you're post-surgery and we haven't planned, that's okay. Don't panic. I would say, especially if you're struggling with hunger or like getting anything down, something is better than nothing. If you know, whatever comfort food you're craving, if it's like bagel fish and goldfish, because that's what you had when you were 5, I'm not speaking from experience or anything, but that's fine. We can start there. And even if it's like one bite, that starts to get the metabolism revving again, and the hunger will come back if you like slowly but surely get there. So something is better than nothing. That's rule number 1. Another thing is, don't be scared to drink your calories. So milk or whatever milk alternative that you choose, smoothies, protein shakes, juice is fine, right? Like, again, if that's all you could handle, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to do a month where 100% of our diet is juice.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're looking at 1, 2, 3 days here. Okay. And then just kind of general rules of thumb that can make things easier are small meals, especially if you're like dealing with some constipation stuff, small meals, room temperature stuff, nothing crazy. But I think especially in those first couple days, like, don't be too hard on yourself. Don't be scared to ask for help. Don't be scared to like order takeout, and just get something in your system the easiest way possible.
Yeah, I think that's a good piece of advice there. I think you know, trying to navigate all this the best we can. And I think we look for perfection when we should really be looking for progress and trying to hit those things, right? So yeah, I think, I like the touch on, I see a lot of people try to incorporate a lot of protein shakes and use that, when in reality, those might need to be used as a supplement sometimes, and making sure we get our other nutrients through other ways. I mean, what's your take on some of those protein shakes out there, and any, maybe even some recommendations for supplements?
Sure. Yeah, that's a big topic. Like you said, the protein goal can be kind of intimidating for some people. So powders and shakes, and even some of those foods where like a little bit of protein is added to them. So I'm thinking of like the protein frozen waffles that you see, and just like random things that should not be high protein, but we've turned into high protein.
Yep.
Those can be great, right? And especially like those are also really convenient. So people are busy and people are, not wanting to move, or it's tough to move and that kind of stuff. I think that's great. Especially if you're coming from a protein powder. Too much powder can cause, for some people, some upset stomach. Again, yes. So just be conscious of that. And then know where your protein sources are coming from. So the supplement industry is the wild, wild west. I need to go back and find this paper so I can like be 100% on this stat, but I'm pretty sure the last time I checked, when looking at supplements in the United States, 24% had something that was not on the label or did not contain what it said was on the label. So like that is not regulated at all. And sometimes we just have no idea what we're taking. So look for third-party tested supplements. So that's, again, not to like get too into the weeds here, but you'll see like a little sticker that's blue and it says like NSF for sport, or you'll see a little green check mark that says informed choice. Those are usually better, at least like safer options. It doesn't mean that that supplement itself is like A+ 100%. But think about those things. But otherwise, I think for most people, getting a little help on getting more protein in is totally fine.
I think I like that you brought up, things to look for. Maybe they might not be the 100% best, but it's a better option in terms of using those, the check mark and the NSF. So make sure you guys look out for that. Kind of taking a little dive, this is supplements they were actually a really hot question. And some of my clients still do ask this. And, I don't have a whole lot of experience. I have to go pull to the research behind some of this stuff, but I'd love your take on supplements, and if anybody should be taking any, or what type, and etc.
Yeah. I mean, it's different for everybody. It's different based on where you're at in your timeline. It's different based on what your specific goals are. However, I will happily talk about the ones that I end up recommending most often. So most often I end up recommending some kind of whey protein, and specifically whey because it has the highest content of leucine, which is a amino acid that's in protein. That is that key to turning your muscle signal on. So without getting too much in the weeds, we're looking for whey protein, or usually animal-based protein, or a plant-based one that has leucine included in it. So like a whey protein is a super common one. Vitamin D is a super common one. Most of us are not naturally getting enough vitamin D through food. It's nice to have blood work to see that, because it's not a vitamin that you just like pee out the extra. So it is possible that you can give yourself too much vitamin D. But most of us are not getting enough vitamin D, and it's really important in this process. Omega-3 is another one that most of us are not getting enough of, and omega-3 is a really great kind of anti-inflammatory option. Sometimes magnesium or some form, again, just a really important nutrient here that a lot of us are not getting enough of. And then the ones that people tend to ask about, collagen comes up a lot. I think there is research just, looking at all of it. I think there's decent research behind it, and it's there that it can be helpful if we are timing it correctly. So 99% of people that are taking collagen that I have seen are taking it wrong. So it's not doing anything for you. So if you do want to take a collagen, it is super important that you take 15 to 20 grams 30 to 60 minutes before your most active time of day. So that might be physical therapy or that might be a lift. But you know this, Micah, tendons and ligaments are really difficult to heal because they get really poor blood flow, right? So a lot of times what we think is happening is you're drinking this collagen supplement, but there's no blood flow to that ligament anyways. So, you know, we have the bricks, but we're sending it to the wrong construction site, right? So what we think is if we can ingest that collagen and get it within our bloodstream, when we are going to have that blood flowing to our muscles or to our ligament when we're using it, so at rehab or in a lift, it is more likely to be beneficial to us. So I think collagen is fine if you want to take it, just time it correctly. What other ones came up in your questions before I keep
I was just gonna say, you know, collagen is a really big one, probably one of the most popular questions. Omega-3s and glucosamine are a couple others, and then even multivitamins. So we'll see what your take is on that.
Yeah, glucosamine comes up a lot as well. It's not one that I typically seek out or recommend. The interesting thing that I have seen about glucosamine is you have to take it consistently for about 6 months before you can tell if it's making a difference or not. And sometimes that's just difficult to do because you expect to see improvements in 6 months anyways, hopefully. So I have especially some older athletes that really swear by their glucosamine and they really feel great taking it. But I wouldn't say it's normally like my first go-to. And then a multivitamin, I think, can be a really nice safety net. I would rather see someone take a multivitamin than like lots of individual vitamins. So what I mean by that is most times I'd rather see someone take a multivitamin or a greens powder instead of like a zinc pill and a magnesium pill and, you know, 5 other like vitamins, whatever.
Get one thing in one whole lump sum.
Yeah, it's just easier. There's plenty of people that don't need a multivitamin, but unless you want to do like a full diet review on yourself or like seek someone out to do a diet review on you and look at those specific nutrients we're looking for. Yeah, I think it can be a really great safety net.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, especially like the glucosamine where, you know, maybe it helps. We're not entirely sure, but definitely some good advice there. In terms of, you know, I have yet to see anything, but regarding collagen and, you know, I've seen some things out there regarding like, does this cause more scar tissue? I personally, I haven't read a whole lot of literature behind this. I don't know if you have or what your take is on this or experience.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I also haven't seen a lot of literature on it. The collagen literature in general is very new. And even what I was just talking about of, you know, getting it in the bloodstream so it'll get delivered to the right place. We don't even know if that's 100% right.
Yeah.
Because collagen at the end of the day is just, it's a protein that has amino acids in it. Every complete protein has the same amino acids. So is it even worth getting a collagen when you're just going to be getting complete proteins? Like you're going to break them down before they get to the bloodstream anyways. And do we really have any control of where that's getting built? That's up to you if you decide it's not going to hurt. But yeah, I also haven't seen anything about scar tissue. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know either. And so I'm glad we're on the same page with that one. So I think I'm just very curious about, you know, I work with a lot of teenagers, even just in general, collegiate athletes. We see this sometimes too, where, you know, your sports removed from you, identity loss, all of these things. But then there's something else that happens where sometimes eating disorders start appearing, or maybe have always been there, but now kind of are returning. You know, how do you navigate that, and how, you know, from, you know, what would be your advice to clinicians out there, even parents that are trying to help their children navigate that situation?
Yeah, very good question. You said it perfectly, right? An injury increases your risk of anxiety, of depression, and disordered eating, and eating disorders go right along with that. And I have seen many people either with a history where they're like, I thought I had this under control and now it's coming back. Or just, yeah, it's new and it's different. And there's a lot of like societal pressure and fears that come. So if I could say one thing to all physicians and all parents and everybody that's around these athletes, your words and how you're phrasing them matter. So you and I both obviously agree that nutrition is a really important piece of this puzzle. And I think there's a way to impress that beyond talking about body weight. So stories that I've heard from athletes are they get injured and a coach says like, don't come back fat. Of course, that's going to make me be scared of that. And then that can kind of lead down a rabbit hole. Or there's lots of messaging around like, you're not moving right now. And I think there's a lot of societal messaging around we have to move to earn our food, or we have to move to burn what we ate. And kind of like we touched on in the beginning, that's not true. There's a ton of other things going on in your body that require that energy, even though you're not moving. So I think some of the messaging that's purely relating nutrition to weight is a big leader there. And some ways that we can start separating that is, how can we relate nutrition to other markers? So how can we relate nutrition to how we're feeling? And sometimes that can be like, are you feeling strong in PT? Are you feeling energetic, like you're making it throughout the whole session, or you're making it throughout your day? Like, do you have enough energy? Are you able to focus? And sometimes when you can't focus, you just need a snack, right? Are you letting yourself do that? But also remembering that there are other feelings that come along with food, and accepting food is part of our social life. And that can, like you said, again, in the beginning, that can be a struggle for an athlete. So what is worse, poor mental health or like not having perfect nutrition? I would say poor mental health.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if food is an avenue to kind of help with that, that's going to help your recovery as well. Yeah, it's a really big topic and it's hard to kind of wrap it up into a perfect bow. But if you are feeling, if you're listening to this right now and you are feeling fearful of body weight changes, or you are feeling nervous about eating certain foods, or potentially even feeling out of control around food because you're stressed and you don't know how else to handle your stress, I just want to emphasize it is incredibly common. And there are a lot of people like myself, like Micah, that would be happy to have this conversation with you and help walk you through it, and find something that feels more comfortable. Because yes, it's a big piece of this puzzle.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, well said. I think mental health component of all of this in general and the rehab process is huge, and I don't think is highlighted enough in this process. And I think that pairs pretty closely with an eating disorder too. So a lot of stuff can happen, and I think a lot of people don't know how to approach it. And we need to be comfortable with kind of approaching that in a safe manner, right?
Yes. And I'll add one more thing, that if I could remind all parents and athletes and physicians and PTs, eating disorders don't have a specific look. So not everyone with an eating disorder is a super underweight teenage girl, right? I have worked in very high level professional men's sports and seen all sorts of disordered eating there. And obviously I've seen it in other sports and in real life. Just because you don't know, just because you can't see it, it means someone isn't struggling with food. And even if your comment might feel positive to you doesn't mean that it'll always be received positively, either about their food or their body. At the end of the day, you don't know what people are doing 24/7. So just proceed with caution.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important, don't force someone to talk about it if they're not ready, right? I think that's another thing, is just knowing that you're there for a shoulder to lean on in case they need that, or when they're ready. I think that's another important thing to highlight. So, as far as all of this, the macros, hitting protein, hitting all of your carbs, fats, all of these things, and trying to find ways to eat it throughout the day, how do you recommend anybody track this, whether it's through journaling or other sources? What are your thoughts on those?
Yeah, I think it's very possible to not have to track. I think everybody has a little bit of a relationship with tracking. So what I will say about tracking is, if you feel that you can track and see it purely as data collection, great. Data is great to have about yourself. This is going to be an experience where you learn a lot about yourself, your ACL repair in general. So great. Yeah, tracking can be fine. If you find yourself tracking and feeling guilty or relying more on those numbers than your own lack of, like, pun intended, your own gut instinct, tracking might not be the right method for you. So like, if you are like, oh, I'm starving, I want to have a snack, and then your first thought is, let me go double check with this app to see if I can have a snack, tracking might not be the best for you. But if you are someone that kind of eats and like puts it in the app and you're like, oh, okay, this is what I was at today, maybe tomorrow I'll try to make this adjustment so I can get closer to this goal. Great.
Yeah, I think that's well put. I think, me personally, I'm like, I don't really track, honestly. I base it on how I feel. And if I'm really tired and low energy, I know I'm probably not hitting my daily nutritional needs. But the other thing is like, I love chips. And sometimes those aren't it's great, nice carb, if you will, but like sometimes you need to pair it with a protein. And I make some dips sometimes with cottage cheese, stuff like that. Like, what are recommendations? I know I love cottage cheese, but what are some recommendations regarding like some of that, where it's like, I don't want to get rid of what I love. How can I supplement it, or even some better choices?
Yeah. I'm so happy you brought this up. One, cottage cheese is having a moment right now. It is everywhere. Which is so funny to me. But I think a big question that I get is like, what food should I cut out? Or, how to find balance and that kind of stuff. And I don't think you should be cutting any foods out. Like you said, you love chips. Like, we're going through a hard time right now. Why are we going to take away something we love? But we can, like you described it perfectly. You want the chips, and we're going to add some protein to it. And that does two things. It gives us the satisfaction of the chips, while also kind of like slowing that digestion and making it a more nutritious snack, meaning it's going to keep us fuller longer, and it helps us control the portion of that chips. So a couple rules of thumb that I have are, every plate, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, should have a carb, a color, and a protein. And I don't care if the color is fruit or vegetables. I know people are like, fruits have carbs. Well, whatever. Just go with it for now. So those three things at every plate. So let's say you're craving, I don't know, mac and cheese. Okay. So mac and cheese, I think we've all at some point just had mac and cheese as a meal, right? But mac and cheese is a carb, but that meal isn't really hitting a color or protein goal. So what we can do is balance out that plate, have the mac and cheese, but what protein can we add to dinner or lunch plate, and what kind of fruit or veggie can we add on there. And then same thing with snacks. We want to pair two different food groups together. So a carb and a protein, or a carb and a fat, or a protein and a fat. So if you're craving chips, like you said, making some kind of dip out of Greek yogurt or out of cottage cheese is fantastic. I had one athlete in the past that loved Doritos. So we got those like ranch, like seasoning packets. They're like $1 at the grocery store. And we mix that into plain Greek yogurt to kind of make like a higher protein ranch dip. And he dipped his Doritos in it, and he loved
Oh, genius
it.
idea.
And I was like, okay. And he did that snack a lot. You could, I'm trying to think of what's like another common one, like chocolate. It's really common. People want chocolate. So chocolate would count in the carb category. And something that I love, that I do all the time for a snack, is like a strawberry Greek yogurt, a scoop of peanut butter, and some cold chocolate chips. And then I'm getting like a little bit of protein. I've been obsessed with it for like 1.5 years now. It's, it's salty, it's sweet, but it's also giving us some protein. And that snack keeps me full for at least 2 hours. So it's kind of get me through to my next meal, right? So we can think about balance that way of like, yeah, choose what you want and honor that craving. But how can we at least bring balance to that plate or that snack? Or some people are like, I just want to eat a candy bar. Like, can I never just have a candy bar by itself? I'm like, sure, yeah, have the candy bar. Make sure that that balance is happening elsewhere throughout your day. So if your snack is a candy bar, then our dinner, let's make sure we're hitting those 3 things at dinner, and at lunch and at breakfast and that kind of stuff. But yeah, you shouldn't be cutting anything out. Enjoy food.
Yeah, I say the same thing, and sometimes things in moderation, but also sometimes you can make a good pairing, right? So, that was all the questions that a lot of people had. And then I added in a couple, but what's your best advice before we end this? What's your best advice for the ACLers out there regarding nutrition?
Not even regarding nutrition, but I'm sure you say this as well, like build out your support team, and it should truly be a team. So I mentioned it really briefly earlier, but that like fence posts is what I call them. So if you are in the middle, if you fall forward, who's going to catch you? If you fall sideways, who's going to catch you, right? So your PT is one fence post, your dietitian, or however you're getting help with nutrition, it might be another one, your mental health toolbox, your doctor, maybe your parents or your coach, your teammate, the person that you can talk to that's just like separated from all of the science stuff and like the rehab stuff, making sure that you feel comfortable creating that community. And if you can, that's why people like Micah have this community and reach out there. But yeah, like don't be scared to ask for help.
Yeah, I think that is awesome. That's a good piece of advice. I think we're all here for the benefit of you, whomever is in the middle. And I think as long as you feel comfortable and confident in your team, that's all that matters. So because you're awesome, and I want everyone to know about you, how can people find you or get a hold of you should they have any questions?
Sure. Yeah. So I am on socials as injury_RD. And I have a community as well. It's called Sideline Snacks. We talk about injury, but we also check in on like some body image stuff and some more of that kind of mental side of nutrition that can come up with this a lot. And then I have a 10-week kind of support program. It's called Feed the Quad. I'm really excited about it. It is just a way to dive into this deeper and get, more specific answers for yourself beyond just like, oh, it depends, but this is probably good. Some people want something more specific. So you can find Feed the Quad. And if you're really ready to kind of jump into the nutrition project, that's a good way to connect with me as well.
Awesome. Yeah, everyone make sure you follow her on Instagram and look at what she has to offer. It's some pretty awesome stuff. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. And I know you have other things to do, but I hope to have you back and we'll talk about more stuff. But for now, I think that's a good start and a good knowledge bomb for all the ACLers out there.